If you don't have any borders, then you don't have a nation, right? In a sense. So has historically the United States done well under Democrats and Republicans in protecting the border? The answer is no. Trump did a better job. I don't like Trump, but we should have a secure border.
He doesn't have internet. He don't have internet. He don't have internet. He don't have internet. Stop. Bernie, don't do it. Don't do it, Bern. Don't do it, Bern dog. It has to be out of context, right? There's no shot.
And it ain't that hard to do. Biden didn't do it.
Now we know why he loves Grant Plattner, bro. He said, no nations without borders. Get these goddamn Mexicans out of here, man. With their salsa hips, they're dancing, and they're taking our jobs. He don't have internet. He don't have internet. Stop.
Those before him did not do it. We should have a secure border, period.
Let's see the full vid. I don't even know how he could salvage what this statement is. It seems pretty captured. The essence is pretty captured. This may be the single worst thing Bernie has ever said. Now, this, by the way, used to be Bernie's position in like the night. He was anti-immigration back in the day. He said, I think open borders is a Koch brothers policy, all this stuff.
Sharply raising the level of immigration we permit, even up to a level of open borders, about sharply increasing
open borders.
Foreign aid.
That's a Koch brothers proposal. The
Really?
idea, of course, I mean that's a right-wing proposal, which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would make a lot of global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state, and I don't think there's any country in the world which believes in that.
Come on, someone send me the OG, please. He was on the Tim Dillon show. What the is going on? What the is going on? He went on the Tim Dillon show to be like, open borders are a cancer on society. We must abolish all Guatemalans. What the
there a position that the Democratic Party can take that is obviously anti-people getting dragged out of their houses, but recognizes that citizenship should mean something, that we should have a border, and that, having laws that protect workers is important, and that people employing...
Stalin will be fully vindicated in this interview? Oh, no. Oh, no. Social democracy. Social democracy. Oh, no. Social democrats are social fascists. Oh, no.
Undocumented workers or illegal labor is driving down wages for Americans.
You've asked a lot of very important questions, good questions. Let's start off with the basic. So long as we have nation states, right, which we have, you got to have borders, right?
Yeah, Stalin deported no one. Okay, interior deportations is different. Okay, this is not a defense of Stalin. Okay, calm down.
If you don't have any borders, then you don't have a nation, right, in a sense. So has historically the United States done well on...
We must take these Tatars all the way to Siberia.
The Democrats and Republicans in protecting the border? The answer is no. Trump did a better job. I don't like Trump, but we should have a secure border. And it ain't that hard to do. Biden didn't do it. Those before him did not do it. We should have a secure border, period. I think most people in the Congress agree with that.
Why don't you think he did it, just out of curiosity?
Pardon me?
Why don't...
Bro, this is so dumb, okay? The reason why this is dumb is because the open border position is just right-wing framing. There is no actual open border. The notion that everyone's coming in, everyone's rushing in the country, it's stupid, okay? It's so idiotic. The best way to quote unquote secure our borders is to make sure that people have a legal and expeditious process to come in. When people talk about a more tolerant approach to migration, or when people talk about reforms in this vein, they're not saying all systems go, do whatever the you want, okay? They're talking about having a fair and just process in which people can come, get their documentation, get their proper vetting, proper background checks, proper visas, and can just work within the U.S. boundaries. That's it. I don't like this phrase, no matter who says it. It's ridiculous. The United States had mostly open borders until 1882, and it took until 2012 for the southern border to be secured enough that a majority of people crossing were caught. Were we not a nation until 13 years ago? As far as people also going in and out of this hypothetical boundary that we've created, however, there is no reason to actually walk into the interior of the United States of America without proper documentation if the proper documentation is open, is an easy process, a just process. You understand? As far as when people talk about open borders, they create this false reality. They create this complete false reality where people are just like walking in and out, all this And are there some who do actually cross the border illegally? Absolutely. But the most effective solution for that is not increased militancy. The most effective solution to that is to ensure that people are properly vetted and walking into the country securely. When people always say, oh, why don't they come in the right way? A lot of people don't understand that there is no real right way. And that is by design, okay? There is no fast, effective, and secure way to come into the United States, quote unquote, the right way. The right way takes decades sometimes. And that's if you're immensely fortunate and immensely lucky at the same time. I understand when people say the concept of a nation state didn't even exist until relatively recently, which is true, right? The idea that we have like nations with defined boundaries and defined borders, and that there's like a consistent guard at those borders that stop travel from happening. This is a ridiculous notion. For the longest time, that didn't happen. That was not a real thing. Okay. You just like kind of walk wherever the you wanted to, or horse wherever the you wanted to. Okay. Or boat wherever the you wanted to until not that long ago. And the reason why it was fine was because people are just people. Like most people don't make this trek because they want to secretly destroy the United States. Okay? Or whatever the other countries or kingdoms at the time before nation states existed. So it's stupid. But even with the new concept, the relatively new concept of a nation state with well-defined boundaries and borders, okay? What we fail to consider is that the human condition is still very much the same, okay? The human condition is still very much the same. People are not traveling into the United States. They're not horsing into the United States now, okay? But they're not walking into the United States to be like, I'm from Guatemala and I really want to up here in America. The idea that this is the reality is unfortunately a very commonly held position. It's very stupid. I don't know how to explain it to people. So the fact that Bernard is hitting these stupid ass lines is frustrating. That's why I said he don't got internet. I think that would be way more defensible phrase, not a secure nation, but my point was more that nationhood isn't toggled on or off depending on whether a border is more or less secure. We became a nation in 1776 when we declared our independence, not in 2012. The biggest development relevant to this question was a global framework regulating migration, including the invention of the modern passport, the creation of visas and formalized immigration systems and such, all of which post-date are distinct from nationhood. What happened between 1882 and 2012, Aaron? Any inventions made it easier for people to travel? The existence of geographic borders as a demarcation of state jurisdiction and sovereignty as an international law framework is separate and distinct from the question of border security. That's my point. Nationhood came into existence before the modern concept of a hard border. Just taking a wild guess here. You don't like borders closed because that's how you made a slimy living over years as an immigration attorney. Aaron responds and says, your wild guess would be extremely wrong. I don't practice immigration law currently, and when I did, I never charged a penny. And I'm also strongly in favor of border security, and I think it's very important, just not directly relevant to the question of being a nation or not. Ellis Island wasn't built until 1982. More than a century after we became a nation. The federal government did no immigration enforcement until restrictions on coolies in the Page Act of 1875. Before then, states had rules limiting some entries, but mostly you could just show up. Not exactly the same as showing up in a sailboat where you could die if... Is that a slur, by the way? The C word? I don't know. When people talk about like entries into the country, many Americans low-key understand that we are a nation of immigrants because it's impossible not to decipher that. It's impossible not to recognize that when even white people, if you go back far enough in America, were migrants, okay? They came here from different parts of the world where white people are, where white people were invented in the continent of Europe. So everyone, if you go back far enough, is a migrant in this goddamn country. It's a settler colonial enterprise. Of course everyone's a goddamn migrant, unless you're Native American, okay? So it's deeply frustrating that one, we act as though that's not the case, and two, because people still low-key recognize that in their own familiar lineage, in their own histories, Americans are, by and large, actually a lot more sympathetic to migration than other countries are. I would go so far as to say Americans are far more sympathetic broadly to migration than European countries are, as a matter of fact. Much more sympathetic, okay? This is still true, even with like the anti-immigrant mania and the panic that has whipped up a lot of votes and a lot of support for Donald Trump in the last couple of years. It's still true, even with all of the anti-immigrant, white nativist, anti-immigrant sentiment that's all over the place. even as of 2025, the United States of America is unironically still more pro-immigration than other European countries, for example. It's still true. The problem is nobody ever talks about the other side of this story. Now, in the 90s and in the 80s, as I showed you, George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan were still talking about immigrants as though they're people for a reason, okay? Everyone in the last election cycle looked at one number. 60% of Americans want mass deportation, but they never looked at the second number, that an even larger percentage of Americans were in favor of amnesty. Americans, historically, have always been more in favor of mass amnesty over mass deportation. There's never been a moment in the United States history where Americans haven't been more on board with mass amnesty over mass deportation. When presented as the only two options, as a matter of fact, they overwhelmingly choose mass amnesty over mass deportation. I'm not talking about the way the government is operated. I'm talking about the people who get pulled on this stuff. Now, this is partially because Americans are very weird and unique, and their expressions of politics is a sea of contradictions. That's why you'll sometimes hear from MAGA supporters who on the one hand say, build the wall, but then they're asked about like their parents' immigration status, and they're like, yeah, my parents are undocumented. And you're like, how the that possible? Okay. Or when you ask MAGA Trump supporters, as people used to all the time in Trump 1, when they'd be like, oh, they want to build the wall, they want to get the immigrants out, all this stuff. And then they'd be like, okay, would you be down for giving amnesty to people that have been here for like 5 years, for example? They'd be like, of course I would. Do you understand? I guess what I'm trying to say is Americans are stupid. Okay. They're stupid. But even stupid people are kind of chill with the idea of, or with the notion that like, there are a lot of immigrants around them because it's America. That's what this nation is about. It's like the one of the few redeemable qualities of the United States of America is its diversity. So when Bernie Sanders concedes on this right-wing framing for no reason, it pisses me off to no end, because it's like, first of all, the idea that, we have to have secure borders, like, yeah, you know what makes the borders more secure? Ease of access into the country through an expeditious process, okay? Through a just, fair, and expeditious process where you just quickly move people into the interior, okay? That's it. That's how you secure the border. Because guess what? Everybody always talks about cartels. Everybody always talks about the black market, right? Whether it be for drugs or whether it be for human trafficking or jackals that, engage in that get paid $10,000 a pop or whatever to like move people over the border or underneath the border. The coyotes, sorry, not jackals. Jackals is a different thing. Sorry. They would literally not exist if America had an expeditious process where they went through, but you would destroy a major sector, a major part of the black market if there was no need for them. Same with drugs too.
You think Biden was more proactive with securing the border?
He did some things. He was not, I think by the end of his term, if my memory is correct, the number of illegal folks coming in had gone down. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that overall it was a good job. It was not.
I know for a fact that none of the younger Bernie-crat constituency or the younger Bernie-aligned politicians in the Democratic Party agree with this sentiment at all. Okay? They do not. It's pure right-wing populism built around a bunch of faulty notions, immigrant panic, and otherization of migrants, and hysteria. The idea that people are coming into the country to do is completely false. And the appropriate mechanism to deal with what has become a problem is to offer amnesty. And if you want to sell it to as broad a population as possible, it's fine. Call it conditional amnesty. By and large, out of the 12 million undocumented migrants that are currently working and living on U.S. soil, the government already has a pretty fair accountability over wherever the they are. That's the reason why a lot of these people are getting arrested right now. We know already. It's almost like a handshake agreement. A lot of people don't understand this. Like ICE and the immigrant court system that currently exists is basically like a dial that people turn on and off, where they're like, we know where you are, we know where you work, you check in with ICE every now and then, and it's fine. We're just going to look the other way and we're just going to keep your immigration status in limbo, in perpetuity. Like, those people could very easily be processed and get the proper clearance, proper authorization to work towards a full-blown citizenship if they wanted to. The only reason why they're considered illegal is because the government refuses to legalize them. That's it. They're not doing any crimes. People love to say, oh, well, crossing the borders are a crime. Okay, it's a civil offense, dumbass. Ridiculous. This shit pisses me off, unlike anything else.
That's point number one. You need a border, let's have a border. And we have certainly the technology and the manpower to make that happen. Number two, what happens, what is the appropriate response to, we think there are about 10 million undocumented people in the country today, less than 3% of our population.
It's exceptionally up that a self-described so-called socialist is making this argument, by the way. This is just an old form of left-wing populism has moved on while Bernie has not moved on. Anti-undocumented labor was an old left position for a long time. Even the original anti-Chinese migrant movement in the 1800s was led by the populist left with labor movements. But we realized years ago that this is bullshit. The older generation, Bernie's stuck in the days. Yeah, notice how you said in the 1800s, and I know you're right. His anti-NAFTA position was correct, but his anti-immigration, anti-undocumented immigration position was incorrect. It's so dumb, and it's very violent, and it's actually worse to do it now than at any other point.
The crime rate should almost be none, right? If people are coming into America and they are, coming here for a better life, and they're properly screened, the crime rate should almost be nothing.
Well, it is. It's low. All I'm saying is This is not like, it's not like they're criminals. Everyone's a drug addict.
I don't think anyone thinks everyone is a criminal, and I don't think that anyone...
Okay. The idea that like undocumented migrant crime is supposed to be at 0% is so stupid. They're human beings, okay? Some of them are going to do bad. That's such a stupid argument, dude. What are you talking about? Listen. If your kitchen is on fire and someone is lighting a match, you're probably not going to focus on the dude who lit the match. You're going to try to deal with the kitchen fire. One is a much smaller problem by comparison. It's still a fire. It's still the same fire, but you got to deal with the larger fire first. It's so dumb. It doesn't make any sense when people go, oh, well, okay, undocumented migrants are responsible for, like, migrants in general are responsible for far less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens are. But that's how we tackle the crime issue. That's stupid. That's so dumb.
But we do have a ton of income inequality, as you've talked about. So assimilating people into this economic structure is difficult. It is inevitable that some people that cannot find work will turn to crime. And I mean, that's just inevitable.
But my only point is this, this is not a community that is, prone to large amounts of crime. All right, so what do? You got 10 million people here. Most of them are working hard. Your point, I think, is well taken.
Yeah.
A lot of employers exploit them.
Yeah.
And by the way, often these people are paying Social Security payroll tax, paying Medicare payroll tax, paying other taxes, and they don't get the benefits for what they pay, by the way.
Right.
All right.
But this has always been a Republican issue. Like, this is why I don't understand why the Democratic Party allowed the issue to be kind of demagogued, because even, yourself, you were out there advocating always for workers' rights.
Right.
And, when somebody talked about open borders, you rightly said that, this is something that Koch brothers would love.
That's right.
They were huge proponents of immigration. The Chamber of Commerce, huge proponents of immigration. A lot of, radical libertarians like the Kochs and others, huge proponents of immigration. So when they're bringing all these people in, and whether it's 10 million or more, I mean, I think there are credible estimates that are a bit more, but I don't think it's necessarily about the exact number. But why were Americans told at a certain point that they should not consider certain blue-collar jobs worthy of their time? They should take out student loans and go.
All jobs are the same. Wage labor works in the same exact way. From the perspective of the wage laborer, obviously there's like a different toll it takes on your body if you're working in the fields or if you're working in construction. I'm not making, there is a distinction there for sure. But ultimately, from the perspective of the wage laborer, aside from the actual tasks that you need to do, the majorly consequential part is the wages, the benefits, and the autonomy that you have at your workplace. There is technically no distinction as far as wage labor goes between working at Starbucks as a barista or working in the service sector of some sort, or working as an Uber driver, or working a white collar job in one of these like desktop jobs, these laptop jobs. The difference, however, is that we consider a lot of this type of labor to be replaceable. In the eyes of capital owners, labor is measured by how replaceable it is. And therefore, over many, many years at this point, the jobs have actually gotten at least less strenuous for the most part, but the pay has gotten worse. Your output's gotten higher, the profits have gone higher, your productivity has increased dramatically due to technological innovation, and yet your wages have remained stagnant. That is the problem. This is what I was trying to explain to people when they were like, oh, well, what about like manufacturing jobs coming back to the United States of America? We have this like mythological false reality presented around the manufacturing jobs. The reason why people think about the heyday of American industry post-World War II industrial output is not because working in a factory is somehow more redeeming than working as a barista. It's because when you worked in a assembly line, it was easier to organize and there was more union power and more labor power, and therefore the benefits and the compensation was enough to literally have a single earner household with a car, and the GI Bill basically made up for the upward social mobility that you would get out of a paid for college education. Housing was far cheaper, but it was overall the benefits and the wages that you got from your job that make people look back at that point in time and go, oh man, why can't we return to a time like that? It's not because you were in a factory floor and that's somehow more worthy of dignity and respect than being a barista. Is still wage labor. Someone's still making money off of your productivity. Like right now, if magically people could work as a barista or as a Uber driver and be able to take care of a whole ass family and be able to actually purchase a home with one single Uber job or with one single Starbucks barista job, ain't nobody will be complaining. Okay. They wouldn't be like, no, I want to make sure my hands got calluses on them. They would be like, no, it's great. I love my life. It's awesome. It's the wages and the benefits, or rather lack thereof, that matter. There was a point in time when you could be a taxi driver and have not one family, but a second family that you could take care of on the side, with neither family knowing that you were two different ladies at the same damn time, sometimes in the same city. And you are going to tell me that it's still the same. You could have a secret family on the side with one salary. It's so stupid. Now, even if you're working at a place for like 8 years, 10 years, you still need roommates. People pair up not because they want to build a family. They pair up because they're like, well, I can't make rent with one single income. We need two. We need two people in here. The point is the wages. The wages are dog, because the distribution of all of this economic output is just staying at the tippy top. It's not shaken down. You have to forcibly redistribute all of this output and give it back to the workers. And unfortunately, in the absence of some magnanimous dictatorship, not dictatorship necessarily, but a magnanimous leader, a king, doing this by force, what you need to build is a robust mechanism of pushback and pressure. And you can only do that at the point of collective action, bargaining, labor unions. Ain't no other way. I said not a dictatorship because we already exist under a dictatorship of the capital owner class, and we must change that system to a dictatorship of the working class, or democracy.